Coming to Grand Rapids, Michigan on September 21st and 22nd is GrandCon Gaming and Comics Convention, presented by Celebration Cinemas. Join us in playing or chatting it up with fellow enthusiasts in a community that understands your passions. Get lost in the adventure of your favorite role-playing game. Admire costumes and art from vendors and attendees. Meet the creators behind your favorite mainstream and independent games and comic books. Check out unpublished games and sneak peek at things to come. You can get all this and more at GrandCon. For more information, please visit www.grand-con.com.
GeekCastRadio.com presents GCRN Wars. 2 geek topics will be challenged. The ultimate battle will come to pass. One shall stand, one shall fall.
Hello and welcome to GCRN Wars Episode 6, which kicks off our 80s Cartoons Villain Tournament. I am TFG and Mike, one of your hosts. Joining me is Steve Megatron. Hello.
Hello.
TV's Mr. Neil. Hello.
I still function.
I still function.
We have Optimus Solo here, which this is going to be very interesting. So, Optimus Solo, why don't you tell us and the people listening what is going to be going on between GCRN Wars episodes 6 to 11?
Well, basically, the folks here at GCRN are trying to get in with the times here. It's March, and it's all about March Madness everywhere you go. It's about tournaments and whatnot, so why not join the crowd like little sheep that we are and do our own little March Madness tournament, but GCRN style, and that's why we have chosen the first one to be an 80s cartoon villain tournament. We won't do this just in March, depending on how everyone reacts to it and, you know, what kind of success we have with it. We may do multiple tournaments during the year, throughout the year, with different topics, different geek themes, but we thought a good place to start would be 80s cartoon villains, so that's what we're doing. And what's going to happen, basically, we have a set of podcast episodes. In this first one, we will be recording our thoughts on 4 battles that will be comprising the first half of round 1, and then we will open it up to the public to vote on the winners. We will record a second half of first round, and we will let the public decide winners again, and then based on everyone's votes and whatnot, we will have winners moving on to the second round, and we will continue until we are left with the final 2, and then obviously the winner overall. There are 16 combatants, and they range in, they basically run the gamut of different 80s action cartoons, boys cartoons, hopefully villains that most people have heard of, or at least some that would be your favorites, and we will see who ends up as the last 2 standing, like I said. So it'll basically be a set of 5 podcast episodes with all kinds of voting that you guys can do on the site at geekcastradio.com.
Yes, it'll be five podcasts for the overall tournament, and then a 6th episode, episode 11, will be the final results, final tally, final thoughts kind of thing.
So what you're about to hear in our podcast here, we're not going to determine anything. That's all going to be determined on people and their votes and whatnot. So we're just going to basically introduce the matchups, break down the competitors, give our thoughts on who we think would win in this battle or who should win in this battle. Some discussions may be short and sweet, some may be a little bit more long and debated, but we're just going to give you our thoughts, and you can listen to what everyone has to say and then cast your vote at the website.
All right, who do we have coming up first? Introduce this first clip.
Well,
Kevin.
We're going to start off with a bang here. Hopefully 2 people that everybody has heard of, and that is Skeletor versus Hordak.
The teacher versus the pupil.
Oh, blast! I must learn to control my rocket form better. Where could I be? Castle Grayskull. By Horde World. I'm back on Eternia. It's changed since last I was here. Could it be that my old pupil is still here? Ah, my old throne room.
My throne room now, old friend.
Skeletor, how good to see you again.
What brings you to Eternia after all this time?
I came after a traitor to the Horde, and it looks like I found one.
All right. As I said before, we're starting off with Skeletor versus Hordak. Most people should know these characters, but just in case you weren't present maybe during the 80s, Skeletor is the most evil being and dangerous threat on Eternia. His only goal is power, and to that end he will not rest until he possesses the secrets of Castle Grayskull, whereby he could become master of the universe. And this places him in direct conflict with the only man powerful enough to stop him, of course, He-Man.
He-Man.
So Skeletor is the main villain from He-Man, and Hordak is the main villain from She-Ra. Now, obviously, these two both existed in different continuities and different storylines. You had the original series with He-Man and She-Ra. You had the reboot in the 2000s from He-Man, where Hordak made an appearance in that version. And then, of course, they existed in comics, etc., and some written works as well. So these two have definitely had contact with each other. So it kind of made sense to put them against each other here in the first round. So, Mike, I know you're very familiar with the He-Man universe. So what are your thoughts on Skeletor as a villain and on Hordak as a villain?
Well, just to kind of clarify just a little bit, Hordak only showed up in a flashback in the 2002 series. They were going to...
It's about to get epic.
They were going to go that route if that show had gotten another season. They were going to bring in She-Ra and the Horde and all that stuff. Sadly, it only got 39 episodes. But no, Skeletor and Hordak, just based off the Filmation cartoons, these two hate each other. How Hordak taught him anything is beyond me, because they can't stand each other. I honestly don't know who I'm going to pick to win between the two of them, because they both are bungling morons. Honestly, they are. Because, okay, if you look at it by planet, Eternia, the good guys are winning. Skeletor has yet to take over. Etheria, the Horde, essentially rules the planet, or at least that part of the planet where the Whispering Woods and the Fright Zone is and all that. It's basically under Horde power. So in a battle between the two of them, I don't know who I'd pick. So I'm gonna wait and see what everybody else says.
It's interesting to note too that if you follow the line from 2002 and whatnot, that in that continuity it reveals that Hordak basically saved Skeletor's life.
Right.
And it kind of explains why Skeletor is basically a bare skull individual instead of having the flesh and whatnot as Keldor had before. Go ahead.
Figuratively, not figuratively, literally, Keldor's face was burned off in the very first episode. That's how his face got disfigured. And then Hordax obviously gave him a different, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's kind of weird, where in the beginning Randor essentially turns Keldor into Skeletor with the vial thing, the poison or whatever it was, and then later Hordak saves him and turns him into Skeletor. I always thought it was a combination of the two, not just one or the other.
Well, and just real quick before we get too far, I just wanted to give some basics out here, because if you're going to go by the original series, the original Filmation series, Skeletor relies mostly on magic. Hordak's powers kind of are the product of science, and he's able to transform himself in a variety of ways. He can turn his arm into an energy cannon, which has also been seen to, shoot fire out. He can become a massive tank. He can transport himself over great distances by becoming a rocket. He's transformed his arm into a vacuum cleaner.
Form a little better.
So he has a lot of that ability, whereas Skeletor is more so, kind of the mystical, magical. He does have the ability, obviously, to transport himself and to do a lot of the same things that Hordak does. It's just in a different way. Instead of transforming his own body parts into stuff or his whole body into things, Skeletor uses more, the mystical magic realm. I mean, it kind of all blends together, but
True.
who else has thoughts on Skeletor and Hordak?
Well, I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion, but I'm going to go with Hordak just because, like Mike said, Hordak pretty much ruled Etheria, and in the 20 years that he left Eternia, what did Skeletor do? He pretty much rules Snake Mountain, which is run down and looks like crap. And Hordak actually got stuff done. He's bumbling, but he accomplished something. He has an army. So I'm gonna give it to Hordak. Although Skeletor does deserve props because he did take out Horde Prime in that one cartoon where he turned to face. And I take it we're not going to count the New Adventures version of Skeletor, the Groucho version, as I call him. I don't know what that would even add to Skeletor's character.
I think that would make him worse somehow.
I'm not
considering that the picture that we used for the matchup is the classic Skeletor look and not the comedic villain. No,
not the
New Adventures is not in continuity.
Technically, it is, but it's not in this continuity.
I know it is, but I'm just saying that it's in this purpose. It's not.
They also had very different ways in how they ruled and how they basically commanded their underlings and their minions and whatnot. Skeletor didn't always seem to be in control of his men, whereas Hordak was much more. He at one point he just at least in the 2000 version, that one scene, he just completely annihilated one of his. I don't know if it was one of his generals or one of his, what his technical rank would be, but someone who disagreed with him, and he just basically just killed him. So Hordak had definitely a different way of ruling that made him seem more intimidating, I think, than Skeletor, who at times was just basically whining and crying why his people sucked.
Yeah. And the other thing is, Hordak, as you said, Kevin, is more so military than Skeletor is. And he essentially has, they even say, an army of Horde troopers. The only army Skeletor has is poorly constructed robots.
I know this is going to probably irritate people that listen to us all the time because we always revert back to Transformers analogies, but to me, Skeletor is almost akin to the Starscream to Hordak's Megatron.
I would so agree with that.
I'm not saying which one's better. I'm just saying that's kind of how they seem to line up. If they're in the same universe, Skeletor is more of the whiny. I mean, I love Skeletor. He's one of my favorite villains of all time. But Hordak's much more militarily and intimidating to me.
Steve,
I would say that between the two of them, and to piggyback on kind of what you guys have already said, it just. They kind of pale in comparison, with Skeletor anyway. He, like you guys said, had 20 years to do absolutely nothing. And Hordak rules, a big area. And just for sheer appearance alone, Hordak looks more intimidating than Skeletor.
Yeah.
I mean, just...
Now, if you could take the live-action version of Skeletor, that was pretty badass.
Oh, yeah, that would... that one would kick this one's ass in a heartbeat. But, and I think it's pretty typical of the 80s to have the bumbling villains.
Yeah.
Other than a select few, but that didn't come till later. But, anyways, the main thing, I think that Hordak would mop Skeletor's ass if he got the actual chance to do it the right way and couldn't get himself locked up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's hard because they both have the ability to escape. So if they are battling each other, would the battle ever happen, or would they just keep transporting themselves away? Like Skeletor would just keep going back to Snake Mountain, and Hordak
They would do
have
the eternal dance of escaping and
yeah.
cowards.
The other thing you got to take into account is that they know one another because they are pupil and student, much like Obi-Wan and Vader were. They know each other's weaknesses. I mean, you take a look at Secret of the Sword. Skeletor just does a straight double cross and just kicks Hordak back to Etheria, essentially. And then Hordak is just like, oh my god, I can't believe he did. He doesn't say that exactly, but it's like one of those things where, overall, I would agree with you guys that in the long run, in a long, drawn-out battle, Hordak would probably beat Skeletor's ass. But
what if we give Skeletor all the things that his different action figures got, like the claws that snap back and forth?
If you did that, I would probably say Skeletor would win. But
if we did that, we would also have to give Hordak all the stuff that his did, because Hordak, even though Skeletor got battle armor, Hordak got vac metal armor a couple of times.
Yeah, but Skeletor had that one figure that had like the Terror Claws thing or whatever.
Yep.
Those were pretty damaging, I would think.
I don't know. Any final thoughts, Neil?
No, you guys are entering a territory that I'm not familiar with, which is the boys.
All right, so Hordak wins for our opinion, but we'll have to wait to see what happens with the voting then, right?
We will have to wait and see if people agree or if the popularity of Skeletor carries him. But I think I'm in complete agreement. I think Hordak was kind of the master, and he just has that intimidating edge that I think he would pull it out. But we'll have to see what the people think. But yeah, so that would lead us into our second first-round matchup, maybe a little more obscure for people. Some of these cartoons maybe not everyone has seen compared to He-Man. But our second matchup gives us King Zarkon versus Darkstorm.
And that's going to be a hell of a matchup.
Silence! You are here because it is the law of our people that all who fail in battle must be punished. We do not tolerate failure.
Why me? Why don't you humiliate the Spectral Knights?
All right, so as we said, we have King Zarkon going against Darkstorm. For those of you who don't know who the heck we're talking about, King Zarkon is the ruler of Planet Doom and the Drool Empire from the cartoon Voltron. And oftentimes associated or brought up with his son Lotor, Prince Lotor. So that's who King Zarkon is. And Darkstorm would be the main villain from another 80s cartoon, which would be the Visionaries. And he was the leader of the Darkling Lords, and he had his little totem like all of them did. And, there's a lot of magical there. He bears the totem of the mollusk, and his power staff holds the power of decay. And he had a secondary power to reverse his own decay. And obviously he was the main adversary for Leoric of the Visionaries. I know maybe not as popular of villains as we were just talking about with Skeletor and Hordak, but Mike, what do you have to say about? I know you know King Zarkon pretty well.
Oh yes, but I'm gonna actually start with Darkstorm because I just before we did the recording of this episode, I spent about 2.5 hours watching Visionary episodes. I found someone who had a playlist of pretty much a majority of the episodes on YouTube, and I gotta say, I'm glad as a kid I never watched Visionaries. All as it is, the age of technology is over. The age of magic is now. And then they all get these magical totems, as you said. It kind of reminds me of, I swear to God, it's a human version of Battle Beasts is what it reminds me of. Everybody's got their little symbol on their chest that has a certain power or whatever else. Yeah. King Zarkon wins this for me. It's not just because I love Voltron. It's not because I never saw Visionaries as a kid. I watched at least 7 episodes of Visionaries before we did this, and Darkstorm did absolutely nothing. Okay, sure, he can make people decay and he can reverse his own decay. King Zarkon sends his magical witch Hagar and his bumbling son out. Of course, Lotor doesn't get bumbling until he starts, going all knock-knees for Allura, but, King Zarkon has these giant monsters that he sends out after people, not just an army of magical, mystical people that look like humanoid battle beasts. So yeah, for me, Zarkon wins this.
Alrighty then, you seem very sure of that. Steve, do you know
Yeah.
either of these characters very well?
I'm not too familiar with Darkstorm, but I am familiar with King Zarkon, just because I did watch some of Voltron. Uh, I I just think that his character, just over looking at the two, because like I said, I'm not extremely familiar with Visionaries. I do know that it was a Hasbro toy line, and that it was Chris Latta as the voice, which is weird. But I just think that King Zarkon's a more superior villain. He just
he does kind of like what we were talking about with what Neil brought up with Hordak and Skeletor, that Hordak actually accomplished some things. King Zarkon did, he's responsible for killing King Alfor in a duel. So, I mean, he does have things that he can point to that he accomplished, as far as his rule goes, and things he was able to people he was able to defeat, and things he was able to rule. Whereas Darkstorm is kind of in that villain class that they're always trying to do something, but given the nature of cartoons in the 80s, it's not like he ever succeeded with anything.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. See, I'm not very familiar with either of these. I have watched Voltron, but it's been years. But just by nature of the two shows, Visionaries being very episodic, so therefore the Darkstorm's plans are probably not going to go very far. Whereas the other guy, because the story is much more epic and spans over the course of the show, you're going to get his plans that are going to go much farther, and he's going to actually accomplish things. So therefore, I'm going to have to give it to
Zarkon.
Zarkon. Yeah, I can't believe I couldn't remember his name.
And
yeah, King Zarkon wins it for me. But but I'm not very informed on this, so take that for what you will.
Well, I think another thing that you can kind of look at when you're comparing these two is, it's been a long time since I was up on my Visionary knowledge, but I believe, if you take the totem away from Darkstorm,
he's just another guy.
yeah, if you take the objects away, like the objects are the things that are giving him his powers, whereas King Zarkon basically just has, if I'm remembering right, he just has power.
He has magic powers, yes.
So in that fashion, if they were in a battle and King Zarkon was able to, remove the items or the objects from Darkstorm, I would think it would be over.
Yeah, it would be.
So I think we're pretty clear on this one, unless anyone has anything to objectively say that we're all in agreement that King Zarkon would probably take this one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, we'll have to see what the people say and what they think as far as King Zarkon and Darkstorm. But that will lead us into the next matchup, which we're going old school now. Not that all of these aren't from the 80s, but these are from the early 80s. And we're going to look at the next matchup being, see if anybody even knows who I'm talking about here, Venger and Overlord.
Demon Dragon is uncontrollable. More powerful than I planned. He will destroy the realm unless something is done.
Helping drop it. It pains me.
All right, well, just in case you all are still scratching your head after hearing those clips and you're still not sure who the heck we're talking about here, Venger would be the main villain from the cartoon Dungeons & Dragons, and Overlord would be the main villain from the cartoon Black Star, which basically preceded all of the other cartoons that we are discussing. Now, if you're going by just who had the most horns on their helmet, I guess Overlord wins this because he definitely has the outfit with the 4 horns coming out the side, whereas Venger always peculiarly had just the 1 horn.
Well, he does have wings over Overlord.
He does have wings. Now, I want to start here real quick because I just remember Dungeons & Dragons. I loved that cartoon as a kid. And literally, Venger was one of the only villains in all of the 80s cartoons that I watched that literally gave me the creeps. Like, he was scary to me as a kid. And I don't know what it was about him. I don't know if it was the black horse that he rode, or the one horn, or the massive wings that he had, or the fact that Peter Cullen was doing the voice, which if Peter Cullen would have never done Optimus Prime, I literally think he would have gone and done a lot more villain voices because he had a cool villain voice. But since Optimus Prime has become such an iconic voice and character and whatever, it's kind of like makes it so it's hard not to hear that. But he has a booming, intimidating villain voice, and I thought it fit Venger really well. He was just like I said, an intimidating, scary look from the looks and everything. And of course, he's a powerful sorcerer. And another thing that kind of made him cool to me as a kid was the mystery about him, because you didn't get to hear him a lot or get a lot of information about him. He would come and go, or he would appear and not appear. He would, change forms. He had power, with lightning and shape-shifting and stuff like that. But he's not immortal and he's not invincible. So, I mean, I guess he could be beaten. But to me, he was a very intimidating character in and of itself. So I'm going to lean towards Venger in this one. But that's not to say that the Overlord wasn't kind of an intimidating villain as well. I just don't think he had the powers of Venger, and Venger can fly around and do all kinds of stuff that Overlord's going to have to try to compete with. So that's going to be a tricky thing to do. Mike, what do you think about these two guys?
Venger takes it. Venger is way creepier than Overlord. And out of the episodes of Dungeons and Dragons that I did watch before this record, Venger never dropped a scroll into the volcano. I watched a couple of episodes of Black Star, and Overlord is always dropping stuff, just like people in Mask always drop stuff just for the hell of it.
He's clumsy.
What about you, Neil?
Well, going off, I'm not familiar with Black Star, but just going off what you said, yeah, Overlord seems kind of clumsy, whereas Venger is actually fairly creepy. But one thing I want to bring up about Venger is he wasn't the only villain on the show. There was also Tiamat, and Tiamat was kind of the other villain. They weren't aligned though.
Right.
I think Tiamat actually gave Venger a lot of problems, but I still feel that doesn't take away from Venger. It just makes him a vulnerable villain. And the weird thing about Venger is that there was supposed to be like a face turn at the end in the last episode that never got produced. So I don't know what that says about his character, because he's kind of evil, but he's kind of not. But if we're talking about sheer, who's going to win in a battle, I'm going to give it to Venger.
I was just thinking, what kind of craziness would it be if somehow, I know we're all giving it to Venger right now, but if it was somehow to end up where it was Overlord against Skeletor, they're both voiced by Alan Oppenheimer. So that would be crazy. Steve, what are your thoughts on these two guys?
I have to also agree with a lot of what you guys have said. I mean, Venger's, again, he's very creepy and intimidating looking. There seems to be a trend in pretty much everybody we've covered so far. They're all some form of a wizard / sorcerer.
Right.
And it just, if it were a battle between, obviously that's what this is, between Overlord and Venger, I think I'd be more scared and running the other way of Venger than Overlord. I mean, yeah, he has the thorny skull to, scare the crap out of you, but other than that, I don't really see a reason to run.
Yeah. And one thing that I did try to do somewhat, I didn't do it 100% because I didn't want it to be completely like this, but you will notice on this side of the bracket a lot more of the magical, mysterious, sorcery type characters compared to when we get to the flip side of the bracket, which we'll see a few less of that and kind of a different villain on the other side of the bracket. For the most part, but like I said, not 100%. But to me, I just have to, if we're coming down to an actual battle where they're going to both fight each other, if you take away what they did in the series and this and that, and they're just actually facing off, I just don't see how Overlord can compete with Venger's ability to not only fly, but all of the different magical powers that he possesses. Overlord seems more grounded and needing that close combat where Venger's going to be able to come with a bunch of different stuff that I don't think Overlord would be prepared for. But that's just kind of how I see it going down. Mike, any final thoughts on this battle? And I know a lot of these discussions are going somewhat quick because it is the first round. It's always like, like in the basketball tournaments or whatever, when you have the 16 seed going against the 1 seed or whatever. So don't worry. When we move on through this tournament, we're going to get some, I assume, some heavy debates on certain characters when and if they match up against each other. But Mike, any thoughts, final thoughts on Venger and Overlord?
No, Venger's way scarier. Venger could just give Overlord a dirty look and Overlord just pass out. Overlord ain't that scary to me at all.
All right, then that sets the stage here for the 4th battle. And like I said, sometimes you have that 16 seed going against that 1 seed. That may be what we're getting here with Doc Terror against Cobra Commander.
Blessed into Adam!
Boastful fools! Your rash statements of bravery are pointless. This is the fate of all who reject my supremacy!
All right, I'm going to assume that most people know who Cobra Commander is and what show he's from. Doc Terror, on the other hand, is the cyborg scientist who has dreams of world domination, and he goes up against the Centurions in the cartoon of the same name, obviously. Kind of interesting that these two are with the same pairing because they're both kind of people who are they're both partly, I don't know, can you call Cobra Commander partly human at one point?
He was once a man.
I was once a man.
Right. So they're both men who have basically been turned into not 100% humans. So I mean, you got Doc Terror, the crazy scientist, and then you got Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe, who I don't think we need to say much about as far as his abilities. No. Most people should know that, I would think, right, Mike?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very much so.
But are we going with Cobra Commander with the faceplate or the hood?
The faceplate.
He has 3 different ones in the show. First, that other one was kind of early 90s, so it doesn't count. But
what if we go with the Cobra Commander who's already been basically turned into junk in the G.I. Joe, the movie, and then throw Doc Terror in against him? Does Doc Terror stand a chance then?
I can't believe you even said that.
You mean when he becomes the Deke version and he's wearing the silver battle armor?
No. In the movie,
he's talking about Rise of Cobra.
No. I'm talking about the cartoon movie when he's turned into the slithering snake that has to be carried around by who was it, Roadblock or somebody?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty big snake.
Then if we throw Doc Terror in, I think he has a chance.
I think that's the only way he has a chance.
Yeah, that's the only way he has a chance.
But even so, that was a pretty big snake. I mean, he could just constrict the hell out of him, and it'd be all over
true.
in like a minute.
Yeah, he'd just fry the hardware.
Or he could just swallow him whole.
He'd just fry the hardware.
Or he could just constantly speak to him and annoy the piss out of him.
Oh, God.
He'd just go... I
guess we had another chance where we could have had Chris Latta go against Chris Latta.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine if Mr. Latta was still alive in 92? Genie, make me an all-powerful genie! Instead of whoever voiced Jafar. Can you imagine him as that giant snake? Oh, God. I picked the helmeted version that's pictured in the image. But Cobra Commander overall would just beat the ever-living snot out of Doc Terror.
I have to agree.
He just would.
What if it would have been Cobra Commander against Serpentor?
Ooh.
Well, he did eventually kick his ass. It's just he didn't have the balls to do it until he became a snake.
That's true.
Neil?
We're talking Serpentor now? I don't
know. No!
Okay, I'm gonna have to give it to Cobra Commander, but not based on Cobra Commander's physique, because he doesn't seem like a very intimidating person, but he does have resources. He has mercenaries. Yeah. He's got guys on his payroll, so I think Cobra Commander has the resources to handle this guy. Plus, I'm looking at Doc Terror, and he just looks like a mess. I mean, how does he even walk? I mean, I mean, you could put out a trip line and just knock the guy over. I don't think he's going to be able to get up.
Cobra Commander could just throw water on him. He'd short circuit.
Pretty much, yeah. When I first saw the image in the bracket, which will be in the post, I thought, "Hey, wait, is that Dagger? What's Miles Mayhem's henchman doing here?"
Yeah, he does have a little bit of a
Just
resemblance.
lure him into that pyramid.
He would just walk up to him.
You don't stand a chance.
So we're all in agreement here that that Cobra Commander would dominate Doc Terror in the most lopsided matchup we've had. So if it was up to us, we would have Hordak, King Zarkon, Venger, and Cobra Commander advancing. But as we keep saying, it's not up to us. It's up to the people and their votes. Now, Mike, do we want to preview the other side of the bracket or not?
We will when we come back after the break.
All right.
So take a short break, and we'll come back after this.
Are you looking for a weekly dose of gaming news and retro? And check out Off the Cuff, available Fridays on Geekcast Radio Network from the producers of XRG. New name, same.
Pixels in the Animation is the next cartoon review podcast series in the Geekcast Radio Network's long history of review series. We've had Transformers, He-Man, and Mask as far as the cartoon review podcasts we have done. Now we bring in TV's Mr. Neil as he and TFG and Mike break down 9 video game cartoon series. Steve Megatron will join us for the Mega Man and Sonic episodes. We will be reviewing and analyzing every episode of the Mario, Zelda, Captain N, Mega Man, Donkey Kong, and Sonic cartoons. You can expect us to go in-depth and also talk about the game franchises that spawned these cartoons. So tune in summer 2013 as we find the pixels in the animation.
This is 80s action sensation Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm here to tell you about the podcast I produce called Punisher Body Count. It's the net's best Punisher podcast, but don't take my word for it. Listen to the hosts. Punisher Body Count is a work in progress. To listen to this great show, you can find us on iTunes. Just search Punisher Body Count or come to our website, PunisherBodyCount.com.
So we are back here on GCRN Wars, and as Kevin said before the break, you people have to go to GeekCastRadio.com and vote. This is the most important vote you've ever taken in your entire lives. To hell with the presidential election crap. You need to vote on this stuff. If no one goes to the website and votes, none of our listeners are geeks. They all lose their geek licenses.
Who doesn't want to pick a winner, Skeletor versus Hordak? Come on.
I know, really?
We'll vote on these things, people, and you'll have we'll have information there as far as the schedule for the rest of the episodes and when you need to go back to the website to vote on new polls, etc., as well as deadlines and all kinds of that crucial information. So if you just go to the main page, geekcastradio.com, you'll be able to find where you need to go.
Yeah, that's right. And people, I'm telling you, I know we probably don't have a whole lot of listeners or subscribers to this podcast because, let's face it, before episode 5, this podcast was like one episode per year. But we are kicking it into high gear with this tournament and other topics that we have coming up. So,
and if you want us to do other topics, you have to participate in this one so we know there's interest, and then we will do all kinds of other topics.
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of showdowns. We have a lot of ideas in the pipe there.
There's so many ideas. We've got stuff planned to tie into next year's TFG2 podcast. We've got all kinds of stuff. So go to the website, just to recap.
Tweet it, Facebook it.
Yeah, tweet it, Facebook it, everything. Tell your friends about the 80s cartoon villain tournament here at GCRN Wars from GeekCastRadio.com. Just to recap, part of round 1 includes Skeletor versus Hordak, King Zarkon versus Darkstorm, Venger versus Overlord, and Cobra Commander versus Doc Terror. Go vote now. Kevin, take it away with the preview.
All right, and then you can join us in our next episode when we will cover the other half of the bracket, the other half of round 1. And while you're voting on this one, we will be recording our next battles here. And Battle 5 features Mumra versus Monstar. Little Silverhawks Thundercats action there. Battle 6, Big Boss from Cops against Miles Mayhem from Mask. Battle 7, Megatron from Transformers. Battle Psykill from GoBots in a weird, ironic matchup there. And Battle 8, the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Tex Hex from Bravestar. So those are the matchups that you can look forward to hearing us debate and talk about in our next episode while you go to the website and vote on those first round matchups that we already discussed today.
Right. Megatron versus Psykill. That post is going to have a very interesting image made by Mr. Neil over there. So you'll have to go and see that after we post that episode. Neil, where can the people find you and all the stuff that you do?
Let's see, there's animationaficionados.com, where we just did a Gendy episode. We have a special April Fool's Day episode coming up that I'm not going to reveal. There's also Dasien.com, DASIEN.com. It's the website that I had before that I'm starting up again. It's a webcomic website. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. You can usually find me by Neil Sama or Neil Purcell. You'll should be able to find me. That's about it.
All right. And of course, we here at the Geekcast Radio Network, you can follow us over at Facebook, and you can also follow us on Twitter. For now, I am TFG and Mike with
TV Mr. Neil,
Steve Megatron Phillip,
and Optimus Solo.
We will see you next time.
You've just listened to GCRN Wars on GeekCastRadio.com. If you would like to leave feedback on the show, there are many ways to do so. You can visit the website, GeekCastRadio.com, where you can comment on the episode in all of our different podcasts. Be sure to rate our show on iTunes and leave us feedback. Follow us on Twitter at GeekCastRadio. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you were leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.